What are the different types of dress forms? Which one should you choose? For what price? How to have it perfectly resized to your own measurements? Is it possible to make your own? Are there dress forms for tiny figures? What about plus-size body shapes? If one of these questions crossed your mind, welcome. In this new series of videos, we're going to learn everything there is to know on the matter, starting today with this short introduction in which I will address 3 common questions that I receive very often. What is a dress form used for? Who actually uses a dress form? Is it a must-have for beginners? In the following videos, we will discuss the different types of mannequins, their pros and cons, what you should look out for, and what size to choose. We will also learn how to resize and reshape them to reflect your unique size and figure. I know that some of you were interested in the brand of dress forms I personally use, so I have placed for you a link in the description box with a little discount, but I will speak more about it in the next video. The topic is really vast, but it is important, and I'd like to try my best to clarify received ideas and small anxieties that surround the matter and that often inhibit many beginners in the learning of their craft. Now, before we get started, or rather to dive straight in without any sort of safety net, I feel important to address a comment that I often receive, and I quote, "There is no solution for me, my body is not standard." Believe me, there is no such thing as a standard body. We are all one of a kind. Here lies the true beauty and meaning of custom-made garments. Of course, dress form sizes are standard, or should I say standardized, because they are an average of all our uniquenesses, the same way ready-to-wear sizes are created. Fighting our own bodies so they reflect the shape of the mannequin is not a healthy solution, and I'm not only speaking about sewing here. On the contrary, the right way is to modify and reshape a dress form that is as close as possible to our size, and therefore to finally have it reflect our natural and unique shape that is so special and beautiful. It happens, of course, that someone's measurements and proportions match perfectly the one of the dress form from the industry, but it is quite rare, and when that occurs, it is just a coincidence, not a norm. I know how difficult it is to find ready-to-wear clothes, and with regard to today's topic, to find a suitable dress form when one's body measurements are quite far on the periphery of this so-called norm. It's frustrating, upsetting, and at the best, quite pricey. Once again, I truly believe that the answer lies in the learning of sewing and in the craft of tailor-making that respects and sublimates our differences. Whatever your size or your shape, I really hope you'll find these videos helpful, because I know we all have one thing in common: our love for sewing and our willingness to do our best in our everyday lives. But without further ado, what is the dress form used for? It is used to create patterns and garments using the draping technique, which is the 3D counterpart of flat pattern making, if you will. Instead of tracing a flat pattern directly on the paper using measurements taken on someone's body or on a sizes chart, draping consists in manipulating and pinning a piece of fabric directly onto a dress form, which is a representation of a human body. Draping is the oldest form of garments creation, and it is an art that is very much appreciated by designers for many reasons. It allows us to see a garment come into shape directly in front of us, and therefore to apprehend at once the shapes and proportions of the design, how well it fits, and whether it's harmonious or well balanced. Then we can modify every detail straight away if necessary, until being fully satisfied with the result. Changing the amount of ease, for example, moving darts around, adding pleats, removing a stylistic element, deepening an armhole, shortening the neckline, or changing its shape entirely. Draping means working directly with fabric, which is a very powerful and creative process. It's inspiring, relatively fast, playful, and also quite intuitive, because whether or not we know how to sew, we all know what a finished garment should look like. Now, draping can be done with the final fabric directly, and I do so from time to time, but it is highly recommended to use a muslin fabric, which is a simple cotton fabric that has similar qualities in terms of weight and thickness. The purpose is to not waste any of the final fabric if something goes wrong, but also to be able to make a lot of colorful markings directly on the muslin, because obviously modifications will happen during this creative process. But this is something we will detail later on.
À mon sens, et cela n'engage que moi,
My personal belief is that draping is slightly more accurate and efficient than flat pattern making, but of course you should learn both if you are interested in grading, for example. Also, learning how to drape makes the learning of flat pattern drafting way easier.
pourquoi est-ce que j'aime autant le moulage?
Now, apart from the reasons I already expressed, why am I slightly more inclined to use draping when possible? Because draping allows us to create almost instinctively a garment that will really enhance your figure or a client's figure, and that is the most important aspect of sewing. Now, who is using the dress form? Most haute couture houses, fashion houses and luxury ready-to-wear brands use dress forms, whether to create the designs of their collections from the sketches of the designer or to create one-of-a-kind garments for private clients. And in this case, a dress form will be specially resized to fit the shape and measurements of the client. Ateliers, of course, use dress forms as well as tailors, dressmakers, seamstresses, independent designers, tailoring manufacturers, workshops, workers of the fashion industry, self-employed pattern designers, and so on.
Et bien sûr, pour tout ce qui relève
And
de
of course, when
l'industrie,
it comes to the ready-to-wear industry as opposed to haute couture and custom-made tailoring, the patterns created with the draping technique will then be trued and graded by professional graders. Dress forms are also used in schools, in educational institutes, and in every course that involves learning how to design and to sew.
Et enfin, pour terminer,
And last but not least, they can also be used by all of us passionate hobbyists and sewing enthusiasts with a never-ending motivation and an infectious fieriness. Which brings us to a final question that I receive quite often in the comments of my videos. Is it necessary to possess your own dress form if you are a beginner?
voilà une question à laquelle on ne peut pas répondre.
This is a tricky question without a right answer, since it actually depends on the desires and ambitions of each beginner, but also, let's be honest, on their budget. If you have been following this channel for a while, you will not be surprised by my own thoughts on the matter, which are that it would be a pity to learn how to sew without a dress form, even though you are a beginner, and I might add, especially because you are a beginner.
Je vous rappelle aussi que
Also, I remind you that we are going to study the different types of dress forms, which might also help beginners to decide whether they wish to invest or not in a dress form, and whether they decide to create their own from scratch. It is a possible option, but it requires a great deal of meticulous work and care. Now, back to my case in favor of owning a dress form even as a beginner. Despite the fact that it requires a little bit of space in your home to welcome it and a little bit of money in your wallet, two commodities that you may not have now at your disposal but that you can acquire over time. And on the matter, I highly recommend you watch my last video that shares 20 tips and tricks on how to save money thanks to sewing. So despite these two constraints of space and money, I truly believe that there are only benefits to learning how to sew with this amazing friend that your dress form will be.
on est tout de suite confronté
You are
à la
faced at once with the vision of a garment in space as well as the true proportions of a human body, allowing you to improve your skills very quickly. You can use the dress form to create and modify your clothes all night long if you feel like it, and it will not complain. You couldn't say the same from a client, of course. Also, the dress form will not fight you back if you tuck hundreds of pins in it. It was designed for that very purpose. You can use it for alterations only if you don't feel confident enough with draping yet. For example, to quickly and easily modify commercial patterns or garments from your own wardrobe. Or it can be used to create your own patterns and designs quite efficiently. You will see in future videos that a beginner can easily create a basic block and then learn how to make more sophisticated designs as long as he pays attention to the whole process.
Le mannequin peut être
The dress form
rembourré.
can be resized on and on, allowing us to sew for ourselves and for others, as long, of course, as the sizes and shapes are not too far apart. He is a major ally that will make your designs perfectly fitted with beautiful flows and drapes. As you know, obtaining a perfect fit on oneself is quite difficult, especially if you have to reach the back of your body, twisting the garment as you do so, which will make the fit incorrect anyway.
Pour finir, et c'est
And
alors-
lastly, even though this point might not concern beginners as much, the dress form allows you to display your creations if you want to sell them or to create a portfolio.
réaliser un portfolio. Pour terminer d'argumenter,
Now, to end my little rant, let me ask you a question. Is the oven necessary for an apprentice cook, or should I say, can you learn how to cook without an oven? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. You can do many things without an oven and you can do them extremely well. Will you feel limited in your creations at some point? The answer is yours. Alright, I know you will forgive me to play the devil's advocate because at the end of the day, I only have one idea in mind, and that's to convey my love for working with the dress form, even for beginners.
bye bye. À bientôt.